What's the most useless thing they teach in school? They mostly taught us to ask permission in order to use the bathroom. I teach college students. The amount of times freshman students ask me if they can go to the bathroom always makes me laugh. I might just be holding onto an old grudge against my teacher. My English teacher subbed for gym one day and taught us how children in poorer countries made a ball out of trash to kick around. And when he showed us his, he kicked the damn thing right in my face. And then, while playing the game, he kicked it into my stomach. So yay, useless trash balls I know how to make now. In order to graduate middle school, you were required to complete the Cupid Shuffle, Cotton Eye Joe, and Electric Slide in front of your class. I guess this taught us the concept of pure embarrassment. Like, just by yourself, you had to get up in front of the class and dance. We all learned as a class, but for the final test, we had to dance all alone on the gym floor while your whole class watched you dance to Cotton Eye Joe being quietly played from a CD player. Holy shit, that's just cruel. But as an outsider, it's hilarious. The kids of today should defend themselves against the 90s. Mambo number 5 for this poor soul. Oh my god, I'm sorry. I laughed out loud at how absurd that is. It's a really funny memory to look back on, but at the time it was brutal. I remember something along those lines, which sparked my shyness. My class was pretty close, so we all agreed to close our eyes. We got in trouble, but the respect we gained for each other was pretty great. I do remember my best friend and I glared at each other during our turns. Full eye contact the whole time. The sexual tension was suffocating. Surely this will help our students gain the confidence and self-esteem they require in life. We had to do an Irish jig at the front of our 5th grade classroom solo. I got a half second into it and had a meltdown. That's when I discovered I have crippling social anxiety. The fuck kind of school did you go to? I'm from the Midwest and had to do this shit too. Also from the Midwest and received a B in gym one year because my line dancing was apparently lacking enthusiasm. Wouldn't have been that big of a deal, except I had straight A's. Besides that, Mrs. C, if you're out there, I hope both sides of your pillow are sweaty and warm forever. Edit, not one person asked, but the song I got graded on was Boots Scootin' Boogie, the Tongwatast map. Not only useless, but incorrect. Oh shit, I totally forgot about this. I remember having to fill out a diagram of a tongue with the tastes on different parts of it. I questioned the fuck out of it because I could still taste stuff on the other side of my tongue, and the teacher just said to accept it. My recollection of learning this wasn't that you couldn't taste certain things in certain spots of the tongue, but that certain tastes will be stronger in certain spots. Big difference. But I assume still not true. Yes, some parts of the tongue have more taste receptors than others, but you don't taste different things on different parts of the tongue. That's a myth. And don't even get me started on the food pyramid. Food Plate replaced it in 2011. Hopefully kids know better now. In Finland, ours was sponsored lobbied by a dairy company. You can imagine what it looked like. The US version was from a grain company. You should eat 11 servings of bread, pasta and other grains a day. The entire life of my school founder. The worst of all is that they teach us the same thing all the years. Why would anyone need that? I presume it's a vanity thing the founder installed at some point. I will pay for the creation of a school, but I have one caveat. Honestly, if this Powerball ticket pays off, my old high school will most certainly be getting a facelift. That is, as long as they agree to teach the life and times of Hunsum Gym too. Alright class, please open your Reddits to post 487. Alright class, today's lesson on Hunsum Gym 2 is favorite genres of porn. We'll be spending the next month covering this fascinating area of our benefactor's life. Jacob, I didn't see you bow to the founder this morning. That's detention and a demerit. I actually liked how they did that at our school, just once in class. But in the entrance hall there was a big picture of him with a short biography. Back in the days he was shot in his office for defying the Nazis. We're in Germany. That was pretty cool to learn and I respected him for that. The fact that I still remember it after 10 years out of school shows how well that method worked. Or maybe it's just me. But yeah, in general, class time shouldn't be wasted on teaching about such things ad nauseum. Could have used that for teaching about taxes or something. It makes sense if you have a cool school founder. My elementary school ages 5-10-ish in Northern California was named after the sheep farmer who owned the land the neighborhood was built on. Not nearly as cool. See that bridge? I built it with my own hands. Do they call me Angus the Bridge Builder? No, excuse me, but learning about the great Jebediah Springfield is not useless, it's cromulent. Please use his full name. Jebediah Obadiah Zachariah Jedediah Springfield. Completely opposite. When I was in high school, we had driver's ed, gun training, basic car maintenance, home economics. A class when we learned how to do taxes. Where and when did you go to school? I learned how to fill out a 1040EZ in social studies, and home economics was a required class. The rest of those were offered by my school or the community college for high school credit. North Chicago suburb, early 2000s. I graduated in 1991 for context and, while living in Phoenix, they taught us square dancing in gym class. I must say though that the most useful skill that I was taught at that school, that I use every single day, is typing. Square dancing has been taught in schools for many decades, all thanks to the industrialist Henry Ford. He pushed for it hard and won. He didn't like the new dances people were doing and wanted this American tradition preserved. Yeah, but in all fairness, in elementary school, it was probably our first chance to have physical contact with a girl. I still vividly remember a square dancing session we had in 4th grade, where a caller came to our school and taught us some dances. It almost sounds like yesterday. Heel and a toe, and heel and a toe, and slide, 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 clap right, clap left, clap both, clap knee, and an elbow swing. Can't remember the rest. Funny the things we remember sometimes. Well, I'm old, so take my answer in context. How to use an abacus. When I was younger, I learned the abacus enough in Asian math school that I was able to do abacus calculations using muscle memory, so essentially an invisible abacus, which allowed me to do double-digit multiplication in my head pretty easily. So pretty helpful if you can do that, lol. I knew I should have studied Asian math, so that was their secret all along. The phantom abacus technique. My dad legit uses an abacus to do our family's taxes. He's an older white guy from New York. Interestingly, there is a ton of research showing that learning how to use an abacus improves children's ability to do mental math without an abacus, and even working memory in general. A calculator does the opposite. Thank you for sharing. That's the kind of thing my very mechanical, almost 2-year-old would love to interact with. And I never realized it could have material benefits on top of being fun. I think you just gave me an idea for a Christmas present. If you have an IKEA near you, they happen to have a rainbow version that stands up and is perfectly chewable for people with very small teeth. We found it was easier to count on the one that was horizontal rather than the one that was shaped like the rainbow, and you had to move it around. Those are fun, but they're hard to count with. Just my family's experience. Good luck in your shopping and shipping. My parents still do the invisible abacus thing with their fingers when doing math in their head. I was taught that Columbus knew that the world was round, but everyone else thought it was flat. So, yeah, that. By college I was calling American history the but actually class. I had it in elementary school, middle school, high school, and then in college. Every time I took it, the teacher basically said, I know that you were taught blank in whatever grade. But actually what happened was, elementary school, Lewis and Clark were super brave, and the lessons made it seem like it was just the two of them venturing into the unknown west. Middle school, Sacagawea was there too. High school, actually, there were like 30 people on that expedition. The way the AS public school system teaches it. Spanish. You learn it maybe half a year, then forget it over the summer. You'd think with years of education we'd be better Spanish speakers, but it's essentially useless the way it's taught. I took 2 years in school and barely learned anything. I can still pick up a word here and there, but that's it. Not to brag, but after 3 years of Spanish classes, I understand every word in Hips Don't Lie. If Shakira was teaching my Spanish class, it'd be fluent. It's very difficult to learn a language studying it for an hour a day and never using it. I think the goal needs to change exposure to how other languages work, rather than learning a few key phrases and how to conjugate a verb. Have degree in linguistics. Was learning English in middle school, 2nd year. I didn't outright suck, but I definitely was not good at all. That summer I start watching international YD videos, and the year after I get on Discord talking to actual people because it was fun. My language has improved so much after that. I am now top of my class in English without even studying. I haven't touched the book since. Seeing my classmates not improve at pronunciation and general speed and not stuttering, I can confidently say that if you don't use a language, you'll not learn it. Side note 2, I am more fluent in English than in my native language now lol. I feel like almost everything has some value, but I really wish that they taught high school classes on operating systems, Excel, and an introduction to programming and logic. I learned it all in college, but Excel saved me a ton of time on homework. Programming played a much greater role than I could have imagined, and high school left me unprepared for that. They taught competitive cup stacking in my elementary school. Still have no idea why. Edit, this was in central Canada, but clearly it was widespread across a lot of North America. Please stop asking me if I went to your school. I probably didn't. For like 3 months at my middle school, your entire self-worth was determined by how fast you could stack cups. Also, only now do I realize that the whole cup stacking thing was just an elaborate marketing scheme to sell us cups with holes in them. Shoot, why not? What better way to get hand-eye coordination up? That's the thing so many people miss about grade school. You're not actually expected to use most of the knowledge you gain there. It's about learning how to learn. It's about learning how to commit to understanding a thing, even if it seems boring or useless. That's what prepares you to excel in life. But if you end up actually finding a use for advanced algebra, well, that's a bonus. My gym teacher told me it helps with hand-eye coordination and hand dexterity. The universal experience of learning how to play hot cross buns on the recorder. BAG. Not useless, just poorly taught. History. It was just a collection of dates, names, and numbers. Memorize this stuff. We'll have a test. The significance of so many historical events was never taught or discussed. WW2 was the only one that was somewhat approached at scale, but even then it boiled down to Germany was pissed off about WW1 and Hitler hated the Jews. This was at a good high school too. The whole class was in advanced classes IBAP. Write a sorry letter for defending yourself, busted a kid's lip for hitting and trying to choke me and got sent straight to the office. Elementary school needs to be renamed to glue-eating school. According to my son, apparently everything. That you have to ignore bullies and or forgive them. In real outside world, if you bully someone, you will get slapped across the face, get kicked in your butt, fired from work or shunned and made fun of. P.S. My friend's nephew got bullied at school. The bully was pocking him with his finger so hard that the next day the nephew had, like 20 small bruises all over his back. The teacher just told him to ignore him and made the bully apologize. Now I dare you to go to work tomorrow and start pocking people. And I see how far you go. If someone beats you up in high school, it's bullying and boys will be boys. The moment you turn 18, suddenly it's called assault and they can go to jail for that. I had the pleasure of yelling that at my principal in 10th grade. Basically calling her out that as a teenager, they wouldn't do anything about it. But the moment my bully turned 18, I could have his ass arrested. Suddenly, she took the bullying situation differently now that I threatened to bring the cops in. That's a problem with the schools nowadays, completely unwilling to act. Especially when it is easier to just punish the victim for complaining. As you learned, they generally fear the police more than doing their jobs. It's not like adults don't bully. They do it in different ways. Or, shockingly, the same ways. In my experience, the way gym and PE were taught were pretty useless because they never taught us how to train or improve our athletic abilities. It was just weeks of half-heartedly playing basketball with minimal adult supervision. And then one day we had to run a mile, and the coaches would go out of their way to humiliate anyone who couldn't just get up and run a mile under 10 minutes with no training or preparation. It put me off running and exercise in general for a long time. Edit, I'm seeing so many stories here of people who experienced bullying, shame and humiliation in their PE classes in school. I'm so sorry that that happened to all of you. None of us deserved that. I really hope that you all have found exercises that you enjoy. It doesn't have to just be running or weight training. Go on some beautiful hikes, buy a ring fit, take a pole dancing class, whatever makes you feel strong and happy. You deserve it. And I hate to say it, many of the PE teachers and coaches were pretty unhealthy themselves. All my gym teachers were fat, middle-aged men. Mine was hard on practice what you preach, then got called out for being fat and sent the kid on a 12-mile run. I'm a gym teacher. I'm a fat, middle-aged man. Can confirm. In an attempt to rationalize it, I've definitely had moments where after a long day of being in a gym surrounded by screaming children, the last thing I want to do is go to a gym. Different environments, obviously, but at a certain point, exercise stopped being an escape for me, and instead became something I was trying to escape from. So after long days in the gym, all I wanted to do was go home and relax. My physical activity levels plummeted after starting my career. The reality, though, is just that I drank too much. Part of that could be from the stress, but it's mostly just because I wanted to. Edit to clarify for some people, I know how to do my job, I'm not looking for advice. This isn't a cry for help about gaining weight. I'm just explaining why it happened. And if you think teaching PE can possibly be stressful, then you have no idea what you're talking about. My mum worked at my middle school, and one year she got my gym teacher for Secret Santa. And all my gym teacher put on his Secret Santa wish list was beer. 10x over. I hope she bought him a Thighmaster. I used to dread the day. Each year we had to run the 1,500 meters in high school. I was a very overweight teenage girl with no access to a shower. Afterwards, I'm not sure what that taught me, but it wasn't any about running, which I actually do love doing now that I'm allowed to go at my own pace. Also, fuck the bleep test. That was just for public humiliation and nothing else. I grew up in Massachusetts, so maybe this is skewed because of the proximity to early settler and Revolutionary War sites. But every year in history, from like first grade to 12th, we learned the same stuff on the early settlers to Revolutionary War. That would be the majority of all history classes. Yes, it's very important history, and I do thoroughly enjoy history, and that time period in particular, but when it's all that's covered and everything else is glossed over, it doesn't feel like we learned as much as we should have. It was also always taught through rose-colored glasses. Curious though, for other people who grew up in the Us but not New England, was that the case for you? Or are us Bostonians really just so enamored with our small and reckless driving state that we forget others exist? Texas. We were stuck learning about Texas every year, double spacing after punctuation. I can't unlearn the habit. They taught you that? I thought that was just a weird thing some people did. When was that ever accepted as the standard? But you just single-spaced in your comment. Sex and drug education. The entire lesson plan is, just don't do it. If sex education had explained to me the aftercare women go through after birth, I'd consider that a better abstinence program than actual abstinence programs. Instead, I got the standard STD pictures and super basic anatomy lessons. And later, a lot of surprises as an adult. Was looking for this one. I live in South Florida, and when I went through sex ed some 15 years ago, it was abstinence only. My local high school has two-day care centers on campus because a statistically significant portion of the student population in grades 10 to 12 has a kid, or several. I got a great Dare shirt from that program that I wear whenever I light up a bowl these days. Dare was pretty much worthless in every way. The most they should have done was have a short assembly, say drugs are bad, and leave. The Dare program taught me that I was going to be offered drugs for free all the time. Never happened until the tail end of my senior year when I just happened to make the right friend. Memorizing the specific names for groups of animals, gander of geese, murder of crows, etc. I knew some ESL friends that had to memorize them for English classes. This is going to sound stupid, but history, the way it's taught, is basically meaningless. A long category of dates and events without context or real discussion. The vast majority of history is trivia. Because the real story is the cyclical nature of events, the rise and fall of empires, the periods of enlightenment and advance, and the reactionary times that bookend them. You learn that there used to be this thing called yellow journalism, but you don't learn that what kicked it off was the sudden availability and popularity of newspapers, and nobody draws the extremely obvious parallel to our modern blog-driven media. If I told you that in the mid to late 1800s, when newsprint was blowing up, that it was extremely common for papers to blatantly copy each other's stories without an editorial bias tailored to their viewers, sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? Drawing parallels between the robber barons of the late 1800s and the current ones. Drawing parallels between the labor movements of that era and the ones that are growing again today. Shit's relevant and important to realize in context. But no. Just memorize some fucking dates and names, so you'll have some shit to spout at trivia night later. Former history teacher here. I graduated college in 2002, and I can assure you that the history teachers of today are very much taught to teach history by making connections in the way you are describing, and eschewing memorization outside of a small amount of very key dates, i.e., start of World War II in as history, 9-11, etc. If your history teacher is requiring you to know more than 10 specific dates, they are doing it oddly, or your state has a very backward history curriculum. That said, asking people to understand sequence and course effect are different and extremely important. Your example about yellow journalism and the spread of newspapers in the US due to increased literacy rates is a good one. Shitty history teachers don't mean that history class is useless. My history teachers didn't like date memorization either, so they taught it with context instead. Sound like you just had rubbish history teachers, mate? I'm a historian, so this is especially pertinent. They never tell you about what life was like in the past. They might spend a chapter or even less on what people did every day and how people lived. There are so many misconceptions about our ancestors. Food was always bland. People were always poor. Life was always insufferable. The modern era is so much better in every way. Or the opposite. That things were so much better in the past. None of these statements are true. Dates are important. But knowing the specific date of a battle isn't that important compared to understanding life on the ground. We think we are so far removed from the past, but we aren't. We are a product of our past. And we don't even understand ourselves because we lost our roadmap and where we came from. I have no idea why the hell they thought it was necessary to teach a bunch of middle school kids square dancing in California. Not some backward school, but I have never seen anything related to square dancing since then. And this wasn't even a one-time class or something. The teachers carried on for months teaching it, and then I never heard about it again. Historically, it had something to do with Henry Ford's influence and his beliefs that it was an alternative to jazz, which he thought was socially destructive. Nowadays, PE teachers will probably say it's because it's very easy to teach large groups of kids, and it forces adolescents to get over shyness about interacting with and holding hands with the opposite gender. It's because Henry Ford pushed it as a national standard in schools, because he did not at all like the increasing popularity of jazz, because jazz was a tool of the Jew. You'd think it'd be because of racism, right? Well, it was, but black people music was the Jews' fault. Ford wrote about it in The International Jew. Anna who? Ford spent a bunch of money convincing school districts to add square dancing to the curriculum, which would hopefully get kids to appreciate good, wholesome white dancing. Hi. Language teacher in the UK. This is more what they don't teach, but they often teach the rise of the British Empire, but seldom about the fall, which leads students with a very British-centric approach to a lot of their studies. I'm aware of this in languages, but I've seen this in history, Ray, and even English language. I'm not blaming the teachers or the students. The curriculum is fucked. But as a result from this, I hear way too often learning X language is pointless. Everyone speaks English. I can say with decent confidence that I don't think anything I learned was really useless. There's stuff I haven't used, but I don't regret learning it. You know, I like your take. Learning stuff is cool. There's a lot you learn in school where the goal is to teach method or context or so on, not necessarily to have you learn the specific content. Or I guess I should say the method is more important than the content. You don't learn to paint a sunset because sunsets specifically are important. You learn to paint a sunset so you can practice mixing colors, gradients, different brush strokes, etc. Literally anything about college. No dress codes, no bathroom passes. Whatever schedule you want, free time between classes, and overall maturity. School prepping you for college preps you more for going to prison. You won't have a calculator in your pocket in the real world. Edit. Yes, I know how to do math. I'm an engineer and I like math theory. I promise I'm not a brain-dead mobile addict. Why, I know. As pissed off as it made me in class, I am a bit grateful to be able to do math without a calculator. Then again, I suck at math. Sue. That's just the reasoning, not the lesson or philosophy. A better reasoning is that being able to think mathematically is helpful. One example is that you won't always take out the calculation in your pocket in the real world. To be fair, I don't think anyone has taught that way for quite a while, even before tablets and smartphones. My calc classes leaned heavily on calculators. Edit. Okay, I yield. There's more holdouts than I thought. and some profs are still sticking to the old unrealistic ways. It's only as intelligent as the person pushing the buttons. I don't care if you actually know 6,882 by heart, but you should know the number is close to 5,600 just by looking at it. So if you accidentally get 12, 3 for 5, 6, 7, 8 or 3.97 because you typed something wrong, you won't just blindly go with the wrong answer. PE was not only completely useless, but a bitch to deal with being disabled. I'm not wheelchair bound, but I am physically disabled and was still forced to run the mile, do sports, etc., despite having DOCs against it. Didn't get anything out of it but pain. On the opposite end, economy was an amazing class. I think should be a federal requirement. Too many people have no understand of even the basics. My school notoriously controlled kids socializing, expecting us to constantly stay quiet. My social skills are fucking trash now. Yep, memories of absolutely silent lunches, silent classrooms, silent hallways. We were elementary schoolers. Now I can't talk to anyone besides my family without wanting to vomit. How to say and spell antidecestablissionishishimishinum, and then later learning that the longest word in English is actually pneumonenaltricris, DAAI, taught me about drugs I didn't know existed, that your entire self-worth is based off of a letter and score. My biology teacher was supposed to teach us evolution, but had us memorize a bunch of birds in the process. A pop quiz would be him walking into the classroom with a boombox, hitting play, and he'd play some chirping noises that he recorded himself. He'd ask us to write down the scientific name of the bird, or he'd show us a drawing of a bird and tell us to write down the common name of it. It was a mix, but that's it. There wasn't any question about evolution on the quiz at all. It was entirely about memorizing birds. This was the class that broke me. When we studied the cell, I got a 97 for the semester. When we studied evolution, I felt like a dog jumping through a hoop on command and decided I wasn't going to memorize birds. Fuck you. Flunk me. I would leave the quizzes blank on purpose. Did this teacher by chance also have a full month where, instead of teaching, he sent you out to the woods near the school to journal and reflect on God for an hour? My science teacher in middle school did the bird thing as well. That and the stupid reflection journal were the only two FS I ever got in school. Still makes me kinda mad thinking back on it. The bell doesn't dismiss you. I do. Of course, the bell dismisses you. What you're being prepared for, however, is a lifetime of bosses telling you that coming in 15 minutes before your shift and staying 10 minutes after doesn't count as overtime and doesn't need to be paid. That it's okay to violate that safety rule on site. Because OSHA isn't paying you, I am. And the customer is waiting on you. Basically, anytime an authority figure isn't following the rules they themselves set for everyone, you are being trained to accept that behavior in your adult life. Getting to post-secondary and having adults respect you as an adult is trippy like that. Both educators and students have lives to pursue outside of class. As someone who thinks about pursuing public teaching highly, I despise assuming an authoritarian role like that, though I fear it'll be necessary. One time I got out of class 10 minutes late, and my mum asked what happened. I told her the teacher kept us 10 minutes after because some kids were packing up their stuff too early. Were you packing up your stuff early? Did she say the bell doesn't dismiss you? I do. She's wrong. The bell does dismiss you. Next time, just leave and tell her to call me if it's a problem. I have other shit to do today. She called the principal to tell them not to do that shit again, and they didn't. Also, how big of a fucking loser do you have to be to extend your own workday by 10 minutes because you're pissed off that kids get ready to leave at the end of the day? I don't. At my school, when the bell goes off, you leave. The teacher could be in the middle of a sentence and you just leave because the bell went off. My secondary school made us all take religion up to GCSE level. That was so fucking pointless, especially when you had limited choices on what subjects you could take. The other side of your point, I took a world religions class and it was great. We went through the core elements and history of all major religions. Highly enlightening. We have that in Northern Ireland. And I'd argue it helped reduce tensions between Protestant and Catholic areas since the Troubles. We also got taught Islam and Judaism, which I enjoyed. Unfortunately, the whole thing wasn't even worth a grade in GCSE, so we had a whole course for no credit. I was coming in here ready to defend education and say that even information you don't use in your everyday life has value. Then I read the first comment and realized I had rose-colored glasses on pretty fast. What to think instead of how to think. This, especially when the teachers got mad because you found an easier, more reliable and faster way to solve problems than the right way. Aka an outdated strategy that is essentially useless unless you sit down, grab a piece of paper and painstakingly work through it. Same as show your work. In the real world, you need to be able to calculate things fast, not have to go through a whole process just to get an answer. That conduct grades matter. I have a friend whose child got a needs improvement conduct grade. WTF is that about? If her 8-year-old is causing problems, address it then. Why wait 9 weeks and slip it onto the report card? My friend is also a teacher and completely agreed with me. I got plenty of unsatisfactory conduct grades in school, and yet I still managed to get a college degree and have a career. Screw that nonsense. I got a needs improvement for not turning in an assignment. I was acing the class and I wasn't even causing a disturbance. It's totally meaningless. Stop acting out, you ACA 901. From my perspective, it's not what they teach that makes the curriculum so outdated. It's what they don't teach that makes my blood boil. Anyone who says algebra was useless clearly never took chemistry. We were living in South Jersey at the time the Eagles went to the Super Bowl in 2004, and my elementary school taught us the Eagles fight song. Had a whole school assembly by grade level to teach us the Philadelphia Eagles fight song, and we weren't dismissed till we all knew it.